So that was the Turin horse, Béla, Tarr and Agnes Chrzanowski's apocalyptic film, very relevant for our times, you might say. Carmen, what did you think?
I mean, what a film, basically, is my response. So I've seen it maybe 3 times now, and I saw it twice when it came out, and I haven't seen it for 10 years. So I was kind of amazed to revisit it, actually, because I think it is so, watching it in pandemic times now, and also a lot of things that have happened with visual culture in the past 10 years, like it's really kind of prescient of a lot of things, I think. I mean, it's basically a film about the end of the world, as we saw, and different kinds of worlds ending, depending how you want to interpret it. And so, I mean, one of those levels, I think, is cinema. So it's very like old world, old school kind of European cinema, you know, like black and white, long takes, slow, very weighty kind of philosophical ideas. And when you look at what's happening now with more and more things going online, TikTok culture maybe is like the exact opposite, you know, this very kind of fragmented, shiny, quick, chatty kind of culture. And so, you know, when Béla Tarr made the film and said, "This is my last film, the circle is ending," I think partly that was about his view of art, or, you know, a changing world. And so watching that today, I think it was quite, you know, quite noticeable how much further that has changed. And then in terms of just the themes of the film as well, I mean, you know, you start with this kind of act of violence, or Nietzsche witnessing this horse being whipped, and it's a very, you know, inhuman act of the way that humans maybe have the set hierarchy with the animal world, and then the whole world is out of joint after that. The horse goes on strike, is kind of not eating, and you can look at it as, you know, the way that humans interact with the natural environment, and we've maybe just taken things way too far, and everything is breaking down, and there's resource scarcity in the film as well. So the well goes dry. You know, there's a sense that the systems that have been in place are no longer working, and everything is falling apart. And so if you look at that, you know, from the pandemic perspective of how we've been using animals and resources and things, I think it gives a bit of a shock. And lastly, also, I was quite struck by the sense in the film of philosophies and superstitions. So going back to a very kind of superstitious world, I think we can see that now too with conspiracy theories and things. So there's a sense of like very standard systems of belief that we were very sure of kind of collapsing, and I think that yeah, that is also very valid.
Yeah, no, I think you've actually brought out how relevant it is so well. And actually, just to pick up your point on the hierarchies, I think what's interesting is that we see how flawed that kind of self-imposed superiority is, because you know, the one constant thing really in the film is the wind. You know, the wind that's just lashing and lashing, and you know, as much as we think we might have dominion over the animal world, the natural world, that totally, you know, subverts it, I think, and shows us that we're totally at the whim of nature and climate, and this in particular an exhausted climate, I think, from human activity. But I also think just something that I found so I don't know, so compelling is that sense of time. And I think there are maybe almost sort of 2 timelines going on, and that we do, as you say, have these really protracted scenes, you know, completely opposite of today's, you know, TikTok, where you feel like Tarr just really wants us to feel time, feel what time actually feels like, to feel how long it takes to peel a potato, or to get dressed, or whatever it is. So I think that's kind of that really interminable sense of time is going on. And then I think we also have this sense of time rushing towards us, like the end of time, the apocalypse, all these warnings of the world ending. And also this idea of the 7 days, almost like a kind of reverse creation story. We're got to the point now where we've stopped expanding, and now we're kind of imploding on ourselves. Which, watching it, I think back, because this is the second time I've seen it, I think I had a much better sense of it that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what you say about this feeling, or the fact that it's very like the wind and things like that, it's a very material kind of earthbound film, which I find quite interesting, like compared to a filmmaker like, I don't know, Tarkovsky, who's very like spiritual and trying to get closer to heaven. Everything about this film, it's the elements, it's very physical, there's mud, it's about, as you were saying, these like repeated actions. It's stripping everything down to an essence of everyday life without any kind of ornamentation, but then I think when you get to the essence, you kind of get back to this idea of, okay, what does all of this mean? So then it becomes you get into a bit of a spiritual state. It's almost like meditation, like you're doing a practical exercise for so long that then like that idea comes into it. And so it's not like an anti-religion film, but then I think also there's no answer. Like it ends with the girl going like, what is all this, what is happening? And then her father is just like, I don't know, like go to bed and then we'll try again tomorrow, which is kind of a view of what life is in a way, like this kind of drudgery and repetition, when you're not quite sure what anything means. So in that sense, I think it's quite interesting. And also, I would say that it's almost animistic. So when you're like Béla Tarr does, when you're focusing so much on objects as well, whether it's a glass of water or a potato or something like that, and giving the attention of the camera, everything becomes imbued with this kind of meaning as well. So very material world, but also very metaphysical at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I think the meaning question is so interesting in this film, because I mean, to sort of, I guess, state where I'm coming from, I read a lot of Eastern European literature, and Laszlo Krasznahorkai, the Hungarian author who's worked a lot with Béla Tarr, is I just love him. But there was a critic who wrote about his books as which in a way kind of, I suppose, they're different, but as much as they could replicate Tarr's cinematic style, they do, and that they're very kind of repetitive motifs, and they're very sort of strange, and you never know quite where you are. But the critic wrote that he murders things into meaninglessness, by this kind of repetition, and as you say, this sense of like almost like a Groundhog Day, just this drudgery, doing the same things every day. And so I kind of feel that's also going on in Béla Tarr's film, this sort of extracting as much as you can from life so that it almost becomes meaningless, but then at the same time watching the film you feel it is meaningful. And I suppose there's also this another literary reference that comes to mind, which is from Samuel Beckett, where there's a line in the play where it goes, I can't go on, I'll go on, as if I think the whole film is suspended in that kind of place between despair and, I mean, hope, for want of a better word, just this, that is where life is, in that gap. And I think that is what the film does so well. Kind of show that life is irreducible in a way, that actually, as much as I think we're all despairing, like life is always, well, it's always there in a way. It's almost inescapable, which makes it amazing and wonderful and full of hope, and also makes it imprisoning and terrifying. So it kind of leaves you, I suppose, in that place. It doesn't take you anywhere necessarily, but sort of deepens, I suppose, that understanding of reality. So heavy.
And it's heavy, but I don't find him a nihilistic filmmaker at all. Like, he has a real human feeling, and I think there's a humor in the absurdity of the situation. And also, he's not so much focused on events or dramatic things that are happening, but he's kind of giving dignity to his characters in a way. He's focusing on the faces, or he's really, I think he sees a real humanness, or there's some compassion even in this like terrible drudgery, that you kind of come away from the film. I don't feel depressed after watching his films. I feel, because there is that like black humor in there as well, somehow, I think. And also, I was interested with what you were saying about, Eastern European references, because I think also there's a kind of a anti-capitalism in the old school anti-capitalism in this film. It's not overt, but like when the guy turns up to get some palinka because he's run out, and he's talking about men acquire and debase and acquire and debase, and that's the way that the world goes. So this idea of consumerism and taking from the world until the world runs out, I think that's very much part of the film as well. So kind of maybe the world is out of joint because of this like consumerist thing as well. So
I think that relates to the nature as well, in the sense that there is this. It does feel like maybe an event has happened before. When we arrive in this very apocalyptic setting, it seems more than just a bad winter, or it does feel like almost maybe something seismic has happened, and probably would have, as you say. I think that fits really nicely with the anti-capitalist maybe thread running through, that some kind of human activity could have landed us here, in the way that a pandemic might just show up.
And when they go to leave as well, and then they just kind of turn around and come back, okay, it's just too hard to go, but then there's also the thing in your mind of what exactly did they see when they went over the hill. And when the guy comes for the palinka as well, and he says, oh, the town, it just kind of blew away. I mean, that could be literal, but also, there's a deep turmoil going on that, as you say, it's partly human as well. And the way they react to the gypsies as well, when they come wanting water and seeing them as a massive threat. I think this is also, the way humans relate to other humans as well. There's no kind of synchronous like harmony of helping each other here. It's very like, suspicious, and so you also get a sense of human relations. There's something not quite right there. So it could literally be, conflict or war or something. But I think with him, he keeps everything so general. Like, we don't know where this place is or what exactly is happening. But things like social conflict or war or things, that like mood or idea is there as well, isn't it? Like, aside from just the nature happening. So,
Yeah, well, yeah. As I think, as you said earlier, it's a perfect film for the times.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you. It was wonderful to see the film again, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm really
one
glad.
of the great films of recent times, I think. Like, really amazing. So.
Well, I mean, you've now seen 7.5 hours of it, so I think you're definitely the.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot of potato peeling and eating, for sure.
Great. Well, I think that's a good place to end it.
Sure.